Gold, gold, gold! That was the newspaper headline after James Marshall pulled his famous nugget from John Sutter's mill. But that wasn't the first discovery of gold in California. The first documented discovery happened right here in the Santa Clarita Valley, in Placerita Canyon, 6 years earlier. I'm Leon Warden, and this is Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History, brought to you by the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society, the SCV School and Business Alliance, and Valencia Bank and Trust. Francisco Lopez discovered gold in Placerita Canyon in 1842. White settlers started moving in around 25 years later, after California became a state. Some of those settlers, many of them actually, became known as the Walker family. We are fortunate today to have two members of the Walker family, the collective Walker family, with us, brother and sister, Gail Starbuck and George Starbuck. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, how did you guys first learn that gold had been discovered, so long ago on the property that your families would end up owning?
One of our fondest early memories is going up and talking to our grandfather, Frank Walker, and he would take us down and have us pan for gold when we were just really small. Mm-hmm. As soon as we could do it, he'd show us how to do that and talk about mining and the mother lode that must be up in the canyon someplace. So we've known about it from the time we were infants, that the gold was there.
So the mother lode is out there somewhere?
Oh, it's still out there. If he was alive today, he would still be looking
Maybe
for it.
still in the mine that's up there at the end of the canyon.
Could be.
Mm-hmm. Now, how long ago was it that your people, first started to arrive?
The Evans family came up. That was our great-grandparents, and homesteaded some land and also bought some mining claims up and down the canyon. Mm-hmm. And they got passed down from father to son and finally ended up in Frank Walker's possession. It was a group of mining claims originally, finally ended up with 288 acres in Placerita Canyon itself. Adjacent to that, there's another 1,200 acres where the Golden Valley Ranch project was recently formed there.
So starting fairly close to Highway 14
yes.
and
all the way over to Sand Canyon.
All the way to Sand Canyon.
All the way to Sand Canyon.
That's a little bit of property.
That's a lot
there.
of property, yes.
Now, I understand that one of your grandmothers worked at the old Sulphur Springs School way back a long time ago.
Yeah, she did.
Yes.
Hortense Reynier
Mm-hmm.
She went to Sulphur Springs School.
Oh, really?
Graduated from the 6th grade, which is about as far as the girls in those days went, and went to work at Sulphur Springs as a custodian for $6 a month. We have the old records on that, and it's wasn't very much, but I guess for her, being a little country girl, that was plenty of money.
She drove her little, she didn't drive it, she rode her little cart with a pony. That's how she got back and forth to the school every day.
Right. And then you had a great-grandmother, I believe it was, who was a doctor?
On the Starbuck side, yes, doctor of osteopathy, and one of the few female doctors that
I was going to say,
in Los
back
Angeles.
then, how long ago was that?
1912.
Finished. Started about 1905.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of this property that the Walker family, the extended Walker family owned, ended up becoming Placerita Canyon State Park, right?
That's right.
How did that come about?
Our grandfather, Frank Walker, sold 288 acres to the state of California.
Now, when was this?
And that was in 1959. I think it was October of 1959.
I know there's a big sign along the road that says something about the Walker family, and then there's a Walker. I guess there were more than one Walker cabin, but one of the Walker cabins on the Placerita Nature Center site. Now, you guys went out with Nancy Jordan and took a look at some of the property.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that now.
Sure.
Okay, good.
Hi, we're here in Placerita Canyon at the Walker Ranch, and here with us today is George Starbuck and his sister Gail, and we're standing at the location of the cabin that their grandfather built. What can you tell us about the cabin?
Well, the cabin was built in the mid-1920s as a summer cabin, as opposed to the one down the canyon, which was their winter cabin. And the whole family moved up here. Around 1928, they abandoned the lower cabin because this was a better site. And the whole family, all 12 of the children and the mom and dad, moved in here.
Now, one question for you is, was there utilities at this house, at this cabin?
There certainly was. They had natural gas piped in from a natural gas well about a quarter of a mile down the canyon, and had running water fed by a spring up in the upper canyon. And the water ran 24 hours a day in the sink. You can just go up and get a glass of ice cold spring water anytime you want it.
Okay, we're here in front of something bubbling out of the ground. Can you tell us about it?
I sure can. This is the site of what's called the New Century oil well. Drilled, it came in other words, started producing in 1900. And it's what we see coming up out of the ground is natural gas. That's the little bubbles. There's a skim of white oil on top of that and water. And when this oil well came in, it was one of 4 that they drilled here in this canyon. This was the most productive one. And the white oil that comes out of here can be actually burned in a car. It smokes, but it will actually run a car. The natural gas that we see bubbling out of here was piped up to the summer cabin. That was part of their utilities they had, was the natural gas. This has been bubbling like this for 102 years, and it hasn't stopped at all. It's like this all year round. And the water runs down and down into the canyon. We see around here the oil that's kind of coating all of these rocks.
I see some rail back in the canyon. What can you tell us about that?
That was part of the oil drilling equipment. It was a funicular railway that ran from Placerita Canyon Road, the old dirt road, up into the canyon several hundred feet above us. And that's how all of the equipment was hauled up and down. Men and equipment were hauled up there with a steam engine on little carts that ran on those rails.
Okay, we've stopped along Placerita Canyon, and we're looking at a rock structure down below. What could you tell us about that?
This is what remains of the structure that our grandfather built in 1908 for our grandmother when they were first married. And 7 of their children were born right in this little house. And as the family grew, they moved on further down the canyon into the winter house and into the summer house that he was building. And the property was then sold, and the structure was taken down many years ago. But this is what remains of the rockwork for the front of it.
Okay, we're up a little further along Placerita Canyon, almost to Sand Canyon. What can you tell us about this place?
Okay, this is called Reynier Canyon, named after our great-grandfather, Joseph Reynier, who homesteaded here in 1868. Came over as a young man from France and built a house here. And we have an old photo from 1920, about 1920, and you can see the house and the grove of olive trees behind it. Those are the same olive trees that we see behind this existing house. Little grove of cottonwoods down here, it's still growing. A little interesting side event, our Aunt Eugenie died at age of 19 and is buried under those trees behind the house. We've often wondered if those people know that. They'll know it now.
Now, how far was your house from this canyon here?
We lived right around the corner where it goes into Sand Canyon, so we were close enough that we were able to come over here in the afternoons, which we spent many of, at our great-grandfather's old homestead. And that ridge you see in the background has many seashells, prehistoric shark's teeth. One of the few areas that, in this entire area, that has that, a little known to many people, and we would collect bagfuls of them. A lot of it went down to the Natural History Museum, and it was a fun thing to do in the afternoons, just one of our many entertainments that we did to keep ourselves busy as children in a canyon.
Wow, that sounds like a wonderful childhood. And for Legacy, I'm Nancy Jordan.
Okay, now I see you brought something with you. It looks like a bottle of salad dressing, the way it's separated. It looks like oil and vinegar. What is it?
We talked about the utilities that the cabin had.
Right.
This is water and white oil and natural gas that came out. I actually took this out about a year ago out of the well that we looked at when we were out in the field. And
take a look at that.
Yeah, and take a real quick smell of it. It's very powerful stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you don't have to get too close to that.
You don't have to get close to it.
Not oil and vinegar.
Okay.
No, that's not oil and vinegar.
I don't think I'd put that on my salad.
What our grandfather did, he made a separator. Is a large metal tank,
Mm-hmm.
and the water, gas, and oil would come up out of the right out of the ground into this tank, up through the bottom of the tank. And you had a couple of float valves in here. One of them would drain the water off, and then there was another one that drained the white oil off, which actually they burned in the trucks and cars.
So this was a device that your grandfather
made, yes, fabricated.
Uh-huh.
And the
Can't
gas.
go buy a separator.
No, you cannot buy a separator. The natural gas, the methane, would bubble up through the two liquids and collect in the upper part, and he had a pipe that ran up to the house,
Mm-hmm.
and ran his gas lights and the old double stove that he had with beans and coffee going all the time.
Well, now I've heard of this Placerita white oil. I guess this is the famous stuff.
This is the stuff.
Now, that was shown at the Philadelphia Exposition, I think, in 1876 or
It
something
was,
like that,
yes,
right?
it was. It was out of a little bit different well than this one.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little later well. This was the one that was drilled in 1900. And apparently, when it came in, when the gas and oil started coming out of it, it shot a geyser up about 60 feet and ran for 3 months down the canyon. Ran all the way to Saugus, is what our grandfather said. The white oil ran all the way to Saugus.
Well, what area was the white oil found? I mean, I guess it's a different kind of oil than is found elsewhere in
That's
New
right.
Holland.
Most of the oil in New Hall is just the black crude. This happened to go through a natural filtration, we could say, bubbling up through porous rocks, and it ended up very pure.
Fascinating. Now, let's switch gears for a minute, go from oil back to gold.
Yes.
Tell us about the Walker Placerita camp.
We saw the remains of it when we were growing up as a little set of bunk houses. He had one of his many enterprises was to bring people up from the city, and they would drive up the old dirt road, and for $1.25 they could rent a cabin for the night.
Now, when was this?
This was in the 1920s, 1930s.
Okay.
Our uncles tell us about helping cook meals and things for them, and this was apparently after our grandmother passed away in 1932. So it was in that time frame.
So this was sort of a tourist
It was
opportunity.
a tourist thing, and he had gold panning. He had some troughs apparently, and he would put sand in them, and then he'd salt it with a little bit of gold. And the tourists would pan, and they would find a little bit of gold that they could take home with them.
So even in 1930, hunting for gold was a recreational
Absolutely,
thing.
absolutely.
Now, did
yes.
you guys ever find gold yourself?
Oh yeah, we used to find gold when we had panning, and I often wondered whether he salted our pans or not.
I don't know.
Because we'd always find gold, and he was always very happy to say, "Now there's the gold, Georgie. See the gold right there." And so he may have dropped it in the pan, but I'd like to think that we found it right in the kitchen.
Our mother always found some.
Our mother is good
very
at it.
good, really good at panning, and always found the little tiny. What are they? Garnets.
Garnets, yeah, little garnets.
There's a lot.
There's a lot
Very
of
tiny.
garnets in there.
You find it with the gold.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard stories, and I've heard something about a hole where some gold was hid.
We have a wonderful photograph showing our grandmother. It's in Placerita Canyon, at the foot of a bluff, and there's a hole up in the bluff. And apparently during the mining days, when it was a going concern in the middle of the 1800s, they would collect up the gold, and they didn't want to keep it down in the canyon, so they would squirrel it away in this hole up on the side of the hill to keep Vasquez, I imagine, from coming by and taking the gold. And they would hide it up there. And the photograph has some writing on it, and it says, "Hole in the bluff where the gold was hid." And was the big thing. Gail and I and her husband went up there looking in the hole. We finally found it after a lot of searching. Used our her son's metal detector. He insisted that we'd take a metal detector
And a ladder.
up there, and a ladder, and we got up there. And of course, there was no gold, but
It was fun. Now
was
we
fun.
know.
Well, you know,
Now
you
we
mentioned
know.
Vasquez. Did your ancestors ever have any run-ins with the famous
Oh,
outlaw
yes.
Tiburcio Vasquez?
Yes, it was one of his pathways. He would take over the mountains. We don't know which trail on his way to Vasquez Rocks. And our great-grandfather heard like a knock the first time at the door about midnight and went to answer, and there he was, so standing there with his gun. And he said he was only hungry. He was tired and hungry. And that's all he really wanted, was to eat and rest for a while. And he went in and they fixed him some food, and he went on his way, and he evidently stopped several times, never caused him any problem. But
Yeah, I've heard. Well, you hear lots of things. You know, there were stories of him horse napping in Newhall, but you know, I've also heard from people who say that he was a nice guy.
apparently, with our grandfather Joseph, he was just as nice as can be. He put away the gun, and the next time he came, he just invited him in and fixed him
what he
dinner.
wanted.
Now, you guys know the canyon really well. I want to ask you, because there is some controversy over where the real Oak of the Golden Dream was. Where do you think? I mean, you know, if you go to Placerita Nature Center, you hike in there, and about a quarter mile from the entrance, you'll come to the tree that's marked Oak of the Golden Dream.
Yes.
Is that the real one?
This is like Washington throwing the silver dollar over the Potomac. It's an old story. It may be true. We have a photograph that was taken at the turn of the century that's labeled site where Lopez found first discovery of gold, and it's a little grove of sycamores. So we like to think of it as a sycamore of the Golden Dream. We don't want to demolish any,
Well,
any
I mean, you
history
know,
here, but
okay.
from what we have heard, it was actually a little bit down the canyon, a little west of the park. And from this photograph, this is what we see.
Now, of course, for the benefit of people who might not know, Lopez supposedly in 1842, the legend has it, was napping under an oak tree, and he awoke and dug up some wild onions, and clinging to their roots was some gold. But you say it's sycamores.
Probably so.
Okay.
Probably so. Of course, the other thing that we've heard is that he was dreaming of gold, and when he woke up, he dug it up, and there it was.
Now, how do you suppose it came about that one tree would have been?
It's a very gnarled. It's a very gnarled and picturesque tree.
Well, I also feel that usually sycamores are going to be located where there's water, always where there's water underground. So that could be very likely that water would be flowing very near those sycamores or around them even.
And plus, if he did it on wild onions, wild onions will not grow under an oak tree. They simply do not grow there. But they grow thick under a sycamore tree because there's a lot of moisture there.
Well, now, Frank Walker had his gold camp in like about 1930, and I think it was also 1930 that some people in Newhall dedicated that Oak of the Golden Dream as the tree. Now, did Frank Walker promote the myth?
Right.
Or,
yes,
or
of course. He was there, and we have photographs of our grandmother and a group of people that are there for the dedication, and there's letters that were written, and what was the fellow's name?
Rivera?
Rivera, yes, yes, a fellow by the name of Rivera, and he refers to our grandfather as Don Francisco. He says, "Dear Don Francisco," and goes on, and we will be there at such and such a date, and so apparently they were good friends.
Now, I believe one of another enterprise for some of your family members was they had grapevines. They made wine. Is that right?
Certainly did.
Joseph, our great-grandfather, had come, as we had spoken earlier, in 1865 from Santa Valley in France. He came with his brother Matthew and Matthew's wife, and they landed by ship in New York, caught another ship, came around the Horn to San Francisco. From San Francisco, they stayed a while in San Francisco, probably a couple of years or 18 months, and they collected a herd of sheep, and they decided to look for a good area for sheep. They went over the Sierras, and stopped in Bishop for a while because that is also sheep territory, and evidently decided not to stay there and went on to Los Angeles, where Matthew decided to stay and start a business, and our great-grandfather took his sheep and went up Placerita. He had heard there was good land up there and plenty of water, went past the gold camps and to the head of Placerita, and that's where he started his ranch and raising lots of grapevines. He carried grapevine cuttings with him. They're very easy to transport.
Right.
And started his grapevines, huge vineyards, and we have a few little artifacts that we brought.
Found.
Okay, let's take a look.
Family things. This actually was a bottle that had basket weaving all over it, and the basket weaving fell apart finally a couple of years ago, and I couldn't, but it actually even had a little bit of wine still in it, so it was a great, really old bottle. We
See a little bit of residue down there.
a little bit of something, but I had washed it out today, and it's a little bit damp on the inside right now, but it was a beautiful bottle. We actually had some other larger ones that were ruined in the earthquakes. Earthquakes have a tendency to do that.
This is a bottle corker, and we found
Let's
that.
move the salad dressing out of
Yeah,
the way.
put the salad dressing out of the way. You don't want to break that. This fits on the bench, has a little clamp on it, and they put the cork in here, and put the bottle neck up there, and then they push this down. It clamps the cork, compresses the cork, pushes it into the bottle, and that's how they get those tight corks in the wine bottle.
Right.
And he bottled a lot of wine.
Now, I was going to ask you, were they successful monetarily with their...
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Apparently so. He had. We can remember the old vats down in the basement. of the old farmhouse, and that and the root beer bottles that we used to find down there. Apparently, he made homemade root beer as well. So, interesting things.
I've made wine, actually, from those same vines that he brought. I have cuttings. I grew them, plenty of grapes on them, and actually a couple of years in a row I made wine myself. And it's quite a little process. It's fun to know how to do it.
Something else you brought with you, well, why don't you go ahead and tell us what this is?
Bello. Okay, the Bello family lived down, had quite a bit of acreage down Iron Canyon in the Sand Canyon area, and they were very close friends with our great-grandfather. There were several other families, Giges and Escaliers, they all raised grapes, but also Mr. Bello raised a lot of melons, and this is the Mellow Bello melons.
Mellow Bello.
And he sold a lot of them. He was great in that sandy soil up there, raising those melons, and we remember going over there as children and eating at the farm.
And olives.
And olives.
Wonderful olives. That Mama Bello made olives, and she had a big vat out on the porch, and with a wooden lid on it, and you could pick up that vat, and these olives were down in there, right out of the olive trees. You reach down and get a handful of olives, and it wasn't very sanitary, but we didn't care.
Salamis hanging all over the porch.
Yeah, salamis out on the porch.
I'm thinking about what some of your who some of your other neighbors may have been. I'm thinking that in the area that's now Canyon Country, the famous freighter from the 19th century, Reynier, used to live out there way back. Now, he had a ranch there. Do you remember it?
I can remember the ranch. He had died many years before. Our mother knew him. But the ranch was one of these game ranches where they have buffalo, bison, antelope, and deer, and elk, and so forth. And you go there and you rent a gun and you go out and you shoot one of these things like a big game hunter. And he had quite an operation going there.
Probably wouldn't fly today.
Would not fly today, I'm sure.
Goat judging?
Oh, that's one of my wife and I have been raising goats for 27 years now. And we judge contests all over the country, as well as in England and Canada.
Tell me what a goat contest is.
Well, it's like any livestock. We judge them on the on conformation to a breed standard, and each breed of goat has a different standard.
Just like a 4-H thing?
Like 4-H, yes. We do a lot of 4-H shows, and state fairs, things of that nature. We're gone every weekend in the summer. We're really? Gone. Yes. We're very busy. This is our off time.
Now, Gail, I understand the house that you live in now in Iron Canyon has a history to it.
It's the Starbuck Ranch. It was our great-grandfather's. It was actually his weekend. And our great-grandmother, the one that we mentioned that was the doctor, it was their weekend place. They lived in Los Angeles primarily. And I live there now. George is right next door. And it's a great old house.
The house is crooked?
Well, the way he built it with settling and earthquakes, everything is not too straight. So when you hang a picture, you just kind of try to line it up so that it lines up with everything else in the room and looks good on the walls.
Well, how did it do in that 71 earthquake?
It did real well. The only thing that came down was the rock fireplace. A lot of the pictures flew off the walls, but the house never moved. It was amazing. It's I think the foundation is, and being wood, it just wiggled around, and it was right there near the epicenter, right at the epicenter. And
Of the Sylmar quake?
Yes, of the Sylmar quake.
The Sylmar quake was based in Iron Canyon.
It was right up the canyon. It sure
I wonder
was.
who decided to name it the Sylmar quake then.
Well, it did so much damage. I think that the damage, as that epicenter moves out, it did a lot of damage.
Yeah. Now you guys do history talks, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, we have all of our artifacts. In fact, we have a lot more artifacts than what we brought. And we have a lot of the old family photos, and we do senior centers and things of this nature.
So you can be booked to give a talk?
Yes, we can be booked. We also do it at the Placerita Nature Center.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we're
My son Richard comes and will give quite a little talk on gold, which seems to fascinate. He does a lot of gold mining. Something in that family history about gold mining. We have cousins and always looking for that gold.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, excellent. I'm afraid that we're out of time. So I want to thank you very much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
And to everybody else, for all your Santa Clarita Valley history needs, visit scvhistory.com on the internet or stop by the Saugus train station in downtown Newhall, Saturdays or Sundays 1 to 4. This is Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History. I'm Leon Warden. Good night.